This video is sponsored and brought to you by the dreamers that hang out on my live streams. Stay tuned to the end of the video to hear their names. If you want a chance to vote on what videos I release next, check out the Mr. X Dreams Discord server. It's an old question. Are we alone in this vast universe? Are we the only beings capable of venturing into the black void of space in search of new worlds? If you ask me, the better question is, in this nearly endless ocean of potential, how could we possibly be alone? Listen to these stories, and let me know how you would answer these thought-provoking questions. Hello there, Mr. X. My name is Rachel. I've been meaning to contact you to share my experiences for well over a year now. Sorry it's taken me so long. I know you don't talk about UFOs very often on your channel, but I hope you'll find some interest in what I'm about to share. Even if you don't end up talking about it, I just have to tell someone about what I've seen. These were some strange UFO sightings, and a couple of close encounters as well. The first sighting I had was over 20 years ago. It was early one afternoon in broad daylight. I was in high school at the time, just looking out a classroom window. I noticed a metallic shape in the distance. It glided through the air at a constant pace like an airplane. I watched it with indifference until it stopped dead in the sky. I found myself perplexed, staring at something that felt completely impossible. The object then suddenly took off, astonishingly fast in the opposite diagonal direction. I was shocked. I awkwardly looked around at my classmates to see if anyone else saw it. Sadly, I was the only one staring at the window at that moment. Fortunately, my later sightings were in the company of others who can verify what was seen. I can't tell you whether they were metallic or not, as I only saw what appeared to be white and red lights in the sky. It's hard to explain, but I actually got the sense that the objects may have been made entirely of light. I know it seems odd, but I've honestly lost count of how many I've seen. I'll describe the most notable ones. One night, I was up late drinking beers with my sister. We decided to stargaze and sat out on my porch facing west. After a little while, we both noticed a red orb, very large, in the sky. It was at least 20 to 30 miles out and fairly high up. We discussed whether it may have been Mars or some planet that became visible, as they do throughout the seasons. But it was obviously much too big and too bright. As we debated it, several smaller red lights appeared around the object and slowly began to be sort of sucked into the larger orb. At least 5 lesser orbs that we could count were seemingly absorbed, before the largest one suddenly shot off at lightning speed, straight upward and out of our view. We still talk about it to this day whenever we're together. I realize it may have been some kind of bizarre military craft, but I really can't imagine human beings building such a thing. It was strange. Definitely otherworldly in appearance. The objects moved so organically. It was as if they were alive. That was the only time I saw a red-colored object. The rest of my sightings have all been similar in appearance and behavior, but each has been a large orb of white that appeared to swim or move like a magnet sliding along the sky, always in strange directions like no human craft I've ever seen could possibly maneuver. The objects seemed to pulsate with life, almost having an air of sentience. Most of the time, I've seen these things with others who confirmed that they were seeing the same as I did, so I know it wasn't just my eyes playing tricks on me. The strangest by far is something I've only witnessed twice. One day, I was with a friend laying in the grass at a public park, staring at the stars as I love to do. I noticed movement in the dark sky. I was expecting to focus my eyes and find a bat or an owl, something completely mundane for the setting. Suddenly, I saw that a huge object was moving through the sky. It was like a gigantic, soaring bird made of stars passed directly over us. I say made of stars because either the stars were somehow reflected or projected off of it, or perhaps it was just clear like glass. I saw this object on 2 separate occasions. Both times it frightened myself and the other person greatly because of how big and utterly bizarre it was. I couldn't tell in the dark how high up it was, but the mere presence of it felt utterly massive. Now, for the more personal encounters. My first close encounter with what I believe to be an extraterrestrial happened when I was in grade school. I remember distinctly that it was Valentine's Day and I was homesick with the flu. I've considered the possibility this may have been some sort of fever dream. I've had very intense and lucid fever dreams before, so I know I could be responsible for what I saw myself in my own mind. However, I believe this all may have been real as it felt. It was the evening of Valentine's Day, and I was sick in bed with a fever that peaked at about 103 degrees. It's important to note that my bed was in the corner of my room, with one side up against the wall. I was in agony, tossing and turning as I tried to fall asleep, when I felt a presence enter my room. Not looking, I assumed it was my mother coming in to check on me, so the feeling of someone being in there sort of put me at ease. I felt a hand slip over my forehead, and I figured she was checking my temperature. It took me a second to realize that the hand was coming from the side of my bed that was pressed all the way against the wall. There was no way anyone could have possibly been standing there. I opened my eyes and saw a strange-looking hand resting slightly above my face. It was wispy and thin, with long, spindly fingers. It had a slight, iridescent glow to it I could barely perceive. I was horrified beyond anything I could possibly describe. The stress of seeing it caused me to lose consciousness almost immediately. I still don't know if I was deliberately put to sleep or if I simply passed out from the sheer terror. I awoke the next day feeling a bit strange, but perfectly energetic and healthy. My fever was completely gone. The second encounter happened years later in 2012. This one also happened while I was in bed, but still, I do believe it was a real, waking occurrence. I've never had a single sleep paralysis incident in my life, so if this was one somehow, it would have been the only one, as far as I know. One night as I slept, my dreams were interrupted suddenly. I awoke lying on my back in complete darkness. I looked up, and above me, I saw what seemed to be a mass of murky, swirling water. On the other side of this wall of water, I could make out an alien-looking figure. It had long arms and an emaciated frame, the familiar spindly fingers I had seen before. I then had an experience I could only describe as leaving my body behind, as my view shifted, pulled up through the watery substance and into a long, winding tunnel or tube of liquid. I was moving through the tunnel at extremely high speed as my home, and soon the entire earth itself, receded behind me. I couldn't feel anything as I ascended through the atmosphere. After I made it through, I began feeling a tingling, electric sensation all around me. It gave me the sense that my physical body was actually dying. As soon as the panic of impending death hit me, I was sent flying back down the tube and back to Earth. I woke up in my bed, completely out of breath and enveloped in a cold, panicking sweat. To this day, I wonder what exactly did happen to me that night. I'm not sure if I ever want to find out, to be honest. Thank you for your time, Mr. X. I hope you found some interest in these accounts. Sincerely, Rachel. Hey there, my friends, Mr. X Dreams here. So, I have a few thoughts on this story before I get into the dreamer's comments. As you may know, if you've been here with me on this channel for a while, anytime someone has an experience while in proximity of a bed or another sleeping area, I sort of take that as, without a negative connotation, I sort of take it as a red flag. It gives me the idea that perhaps there's a possibility. So when someone mentions that they're laying down trying to sleep, or they just woke up for a nap, or they were sleeping and then all of a sudden something happened to wake them up, the possibility of their story being a dream or even sleep paralysis, in my mind, it goes up dramatically. So just this morning, as I was writing this, I lost about 2 hours of sleep, literally in an instant, as I laid in bed trying to fall asleep. So, I know firsthand what that twilight sleep mind state can do to one's perceptions. Not to mention the fact that I've experienced enough truly disturbing sleep paralysis events to know how real they can feel. When I saw the vision of a little, well, not really a little, but maybe 4 foot tall, completely jet black, crystal looking baby approach my bed and bite my hand, and I couldn't do anything about it because I was having sleep paralysis. It felt completely real in the moment. So yeah, I know how real it can be. However, I want you to consider something here. There are some who believe extraterrestrials may exist beyond the reach of our physical perceptions. If indeed there are such things as interdimensional or otherwise immaterial entities from other worlds, what if the only way for us to perceive them is from a dreamlike state? If that were the case, how could we possibly discount even the most obvious cases of alien encounters that took place in one's dreams? It's an interesting thought, if you ask me. Now, with that said, I have to acknowledge that there are many other possibilities with regards to Rachel's stories, as earnestly presented as they were, and I always take people at their word until they give me explicit reason not to. One possibility is that, honestly, she really saw the amazing things that she reported to us. So, let's take those reports at face value for a moment, and I'm going to ask you some questions about it. So, what do you make of the small red orbs getting absorbed into the larger one before it zoomed off? I personally was wondering if perhaps it was a function of this craft's propulsion system, if it is a craft, like a spacecraft or aircraft. Or maybe those were smaller crafts returning to their mothership, for example, after an Earth reconnaissance mission or something like that. Who knows? Rachel said that some of the objects she saw seemed sentient, and it made me think. Imagine the feeling of seeing something, an object, a mysterious thing, and knowing somehow, inexplicably, that that thing might be seeing you as well, thinking about you, acknowledging you. It's sort of a haunting thought in the context of mysterious lights in the sky. Such fascinating descriptions of the things that she saw, like looking up at the night sky and seeing what looked like a living, moving bird, but made of transparent glass, refracting the starlight of the sky as it soared over you. Must have been a truly breathtaking sight. I can only imagine. And last but not least, imagine the feeling of a strange hand touching your face in the middle of the night. Although this instance was probably the most likely to be a dream sequence, it's still a very haunting image. Not to mention the feeling of almost having your astral form severed from your earthly body. So, let's start off the conversation. Number 1, do you think aliens really exist? And have you seen anything to make you believe one way or the other? What do you imagine extraterrestrial beings would be like if they did exist? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. So now, I'm going to open up the floor for the dreamers listening live to weigh in. Remember, if you want a chance at your question or comment showing up in a future video, turn on notifications so you can catch me reading live and join in on the discussion. You'll even have a chance to become a sponsor of the show. So, Gabe Mesa says, I've seen the same ones that look like balls of light or fire. A bunch of them all together flashing in and out and moving in all directions but staying in the same area. Nothing like normal planes. Yeah, I would imagine we tend to sort of assume, if we see something out of the corner of our eye, we'll probably assume as long as we can that, yeah, this is a normal phenomenon, totally mundane, it's a plane or something like that we're seeing. But there sometimes comes a point where we get that visceral realization that it affects your whole body, where you kind of tighten up and you're like, wait a minute, that is not what I thought it was, and that is not okay. So I sympathize with people who see things in the sky and realize at some point, like, no, that is not a normal plane. That's not what my brain was hoping it was. And as a old school dreamers know, I've been within rock throwing distance of something that was not supposed to be in the sky hovering over me. And some craziness happened after that. And I'll save that for another time, or most of you probably have heard the story 10 times already anyway. So Reed says, concerning the red orbs, sounds sort of like a mothership. Maybe the smaller orbs were sent to scout and observe, and they all had to return to the main one. Like the small ones couldn't leave on their own. Yeah, that was one of the two. That's actually probably the better of the two hypotheses that I kind of had. I mean, it would make sense that a small, light, and probably much faster craft, although I mean those things move so fast, how could you really get much faster than the way they move? But it's a really interesting idea, and if they were doing that, scouting around, I wonder why. Why would what's the use of that? We don't have anything that would be very much of interest to them, I would assume. But who am I? What do I know? KC Christian says, so is the sleep paralysis similar to the things people see on DMT? Not to go all Joe Rogan on you. And Casey also says, I think it would be arrogant to think that aliens didn't exist. So 2 things there. The sleep paralysis and DMT stuff. DMT is a whole other level. That's like changing your brain chemistry and going through inexplicable experiences. That, I mean, I'm sure we do have the capacity to go through crazy stuff during sleep paralysis that's probably on par with that, but I can't say that I've ever heard anything that extreme when it comes to sleep paralysis. We're going to talk about DMT in another story a little bit later on. It'll be a different video from this one, but yeah, that's another animal. Alright, so we need to, before we wrap this up, we gotta come up with a code word for this video. I'm going to use the magic of editing to source one from the dreamers listening live right now, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've consulted with the Dreamer live chat, my friends, and the brilliant dreamer, Vernon Long, came up single-handedly with the code word mothership. If you're listening to this part of the video, type in mothership and work it into your comment down below. Be clever with it. Do something fun so I can see you. Until next time, my friends, I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. Special thanks to this week's Super Chat sponsors: whogivesa, Henry Vang, Shinfitz, Angela RadLove, Cindy S., Jessica D., Cancionero, Lilah Katharine, Reed, Terico, Lorie Long, Brenda, Arlene, Samantha, The Lionheart 021, Zen 2011, MrCreepyPasta, A Ron McCreeps, Zucker. Thank you all very, very much for showing me so much love on my birthday. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to like and share. If you made it to the very end, you're exactly the kind of subscriber I'm looking for. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. That way, you can catch the live show and discuss the stories with me. Your input might even appear in my next video. Last thing, if you heard a code word after the story, type it in a comment down below so I know who the real dreamers are. Take care, my friend. Until next time.